And welcome back to another episode of Geek Centurions. Be your boy Eli,
Me, Joe.
and we're here to talk about Secret Invasion, the newest. I think this is the first Disney Plus show of the year, right?
I believe.
Believe so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is, and it's the one where Nick Fury is going around messing with Skrulls. But yeah. So give us a quick rundown on what the whole point of this show is going to be about, Joey.
Well, basically, the main plot of the show is
Mm-hmm.
that there is a secret invasion by Skrulls, who are an alien race that can shapeshift into looking like anybody.
Mm-hmm.
If you remember them from the Captain Marvel movie, they were seen as kind of like lost people. They lost their home,
Yeah.
and stuff. But here, some events, have transpired in between that stuff. Where now there's a faction. They're all like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
no, we kind of hate Earth, or rather, we kind of hate uh, humans and stuff, especially Nick Fury and whatever. And we're gonna just take over the planet now.
That's basically what it is. There's a little more to it, and we're gonna get a bit into that as we talk about it. But yeah, what makes this show very interesting is that one, it's based on a comic book that's well known, obviously, but because I feel like this is one thing we need to talk about real quick. Um, Recent news came out about this. The director saying that he actually never read the comic. He was informed not to read the comic. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and that got a lot of people a little upset
Yeah,
because like how are you gonna adapt something from the comic and not read the comic, and that sort of kind of brings into the discussion like what we've talked about before, like with stuff like the Halo TV show and other stuff where you know people are wondering where how do you mess up this because you didn't read it or do any of that stuff.
yeah, like the idea that um, not reading the source material or not being familiar with the source material kind of hampers your ability to
Hmm.
adapt it well, right?
Yeah. So that's kind of the thing about it. Now, this is coming purely from someone who knows comic books and understands the difficulties of adaptation, right? Um, I kind of get why they told him not to read it because the comic in itself, the original comic of Secret Invasion was more around like the Skrulls were always around us, they were always here, and it involved more superheroes where the people in the superhero community couldn't be trusted. Now, granted, you say, well, isn't that basically what the show is? No, the show is going for a very different vibe. And the other thing is, you didn't have the kind of build up and retcon changes that Secret Invasion kind of had with it.
Mm-hmm.
So it mostly the original Secret Invasion comic had a lot of stuff built up to it and a lot of stuff centered around it that adapting it for what they're doing now wouldn't make any sense. Now, whether you can still capture that feel of the book because like it's essentially what I just said earlier. Who do you trust? Who's there? And like what's going on? Like a lot of like espionage stuff, which is basically what this show is basically about.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't really bother me too much. Not to mention the book in itself wasn't really that good from my understanding. I haven't really read it. It never really piqued my interest. So I kind of just never touched it. And I always heard not so great things about it. So, I don't know. I don't know your thoughts on this.
No, yeah. I on the one hand, I get why people kind of had a bit of a negative reaction to hearing about um the director not reading the comic book.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, I also got I understand sort of both sides, and I mean I don't know. People always like to refer back to like Tim Burton being like not. I think he didn't read much of the Batman comics when
Oh,
making
yeah.
his movies. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, um, it's always kind of nice when a creator goes out of their way to
Mm-hmm.
like look into the source material, understand what they're adapting, and all that other stuff. But at the same time, if like yeah, if it's not necessarily like required reading, right? As long as you get sort of the general idea of what the
Mm-hmm.
story's about, then you can probably tell a good story out of it. But at the same time, yeah, I also understand some people are also just like, yeah, well, even if the comic is deemed not great or that sort of thing, like it has like a lot of flaws, then you can like read it, look at what the flaws were, what did work, and improve upon that sort of thing. It's kind of like one of these like interesting debates where there really is no right answer,
Yeah.
at least in terms of like sort of this comics when it comes to comic book movies, because obviously like you can look at other sort of adaptations. Age of Ultron, like it takes its name off of like a comic book run as well, but the Age of Ultron storyline is completely different in the comics than what happens in the movie. It's more like just like, yeah, it's a cool name for a movie, let's just use it. And similar thing with Civil War, right? Like,
Mm-hmm. They have the same vibe, but not the same story beats.
yeah, like Civil War is way like obviously like more encompassing, had very different themes to it, and uh, like was kind of a bit half baked.
Yeah.
While the movie took what it had, like used sort of the elements of Civil War, ID, basically legislation causing a division between the superheroes, leading to conflicts that sort of break up
Yeah.
the Avengers.
Mm-hmm. So and from that, like I kind of understand why, like the idea. Now, granted, maybe saying don't read the story was probably like the wrong thing to say. Just probably better like you can adhere to it, but you don't have to. You know, it's I think that would have been a much better thing to say. But again, like I think a lot of people just immediately think that like if you didn't read it, you don't you it's gonna be a really like a crappy thing. But like oftentimes you forget that some of the best adaptations were done even without reading it, the source material or like understanding of it. I always find this very interesting. Like so, Children of Men was the that one movie I forget Alfonso Cuarón's movie. He never read the book, and yet he made a it's like he followed like essentially the same idea of the story, but made it like a really good movie.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of one of those things, right? Like those are rare cases, yes, but like I'm not against it, especially if considering that the what they're trying to do in this show is going to be vastly different, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now that we got that out of the way, I think it's best to talk about the show. But yeah, so Fury's back after a lot of shit went down on Earth involving the Skrulls, because apparently, as you said it, the Skrulls are very upset with Fury.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of knew this from the get go with Miss Marvel, not Miss Marvel, Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
Sorry, old habits. So she and Fury were like, "We'll find you a new home." Uh, Turns out it took a lot longer than you do.
Uh, yeah, apparently
Mm,
just things haven't been working out well for them.
yeah, and it's caused a division amongst the Skrulls. Some who are okay with their position and are willing to work with people like Fury, while others are like, no, we want a home. And that's where the inciting incident is. The issue is that a lot of problems between different groups of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Different allegiances and stuff like that. Because we have I'm forgetting his name, but the our main villain.
It's like it starts with a G. I
Yeah,
remember. I think heck, they even nicknamed him G for a little bit.
yeah.
But yeah, he's sort of the leader of this sort of like, radical group who want to, yeah, pretty much like sort of cause divisions within the human race itself. Like
Mm,
they have a bunch of various scrolls infiltrating extremist groups that are like starting to like, you know, uh, essentially try to set up a whole like, yeah, let the humans destroy themselves, and then we will, take over once all said and
Hmm.
done. And then you know, that's sort of like their plan to like divide and conquer, right?
Yeah, and a lot of them are hiding. Well, and that's kind of the fear of the Skrulls, right? The fact that they can hide in plain sight. Because in the first few minutes of of this episode, we thought we were with Everett Ross, but we weren't.
Yeah.
So a spoiler there, but you figured out something was up as soon as stuff goes down,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's kind of the intrigue of this show. Now, in my opinion, I think this is a thing where we talked about this a lot before with a lot of these previous Marvel shows. There's a bit of a pacing issue. They're really rushing everything real hard,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know about your thoughts on this on that idea.
Um, I mean, well, for one hand, this is like going to be a 6 episode
Mm,
show. Um, so it is kind of interesting how they're going to deal with that.
yeah.
But I think it's more sort of like in terms of like, oh yeah, turns out we've just essentially uh, more or less uncovered the Syrian invasion plot,
Hmm.
and it's already being set into motion. And Fury, I think it's part of like I guess the whole thing where Fury's kind of like, I think for the first time in a long time, he's sort of like on the back end, like he's sort of having to,
Hmm.
instead of having like essentially, because he's always like a man with a plan kind of thing, right? Uh, he always has an ace up his sleeve stuff, but in this case, he's older. He's not as he's not as prepared as he once was. So it's very much
Hmm.
of a, like okay, it's Fury having to react, like trying his best to come up with a plan on the spot and reacting to whatever the Skrull invasion is planning, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, it can get a little, I think, because of that's the way it's set up. It kind of leads into a bit of a like a bit of a rushed pace for this episode.
Yeah. And I feel like as we go along, it's gonna slow down. I feel like this is more or less just a first episode thing, just to get everything set up. But it's gonna be very much a wait and see kind of thing, right?
Yeah, no, definitely.
Hmm.
But I think it's gonna be interesting how this show pans out because I mean there already is a bit of like a bit of an interesting plot thread that might be happening with War Machine, but
Yeah.
essentially having to like figure out what's going on with, because obviously everybody kind of knows that like, oh yeah, Fury went up to Saber,
Yeah.
to do that whole sort of
Yeah.
stuff, right? Get all that sort of stuff started.
Mm,
But now he's back, and it's sort of like, why? And why didn't he tell us that he's coming back? What's the deal here?
yeah.
Which is probably gonna cause a lot of like internal like, hey, listen, like Fury wants to keep the Skrull invasion on the down low because I'm assuming that if that plot gets exposed, then obviously a lot of people are gonna be like go into panic, like who's the Skrull, right?
Yeah.
Like take unnecessary actions, this and that. While Fury wants to try to like at least have him and his little squad figure, get that sorted out. But then obviously, there's gonna be factors like, hey, War Machine, figure this out. Why are, these two people who, why are Agent Maria and Agent Fury not telling us stuff anymore? What's the deal with that?
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of stuff like that is gonna be going around too. And yeah. Um. Obviously, when we were talking about since we're talking about scrolls, we talked about the one of the characters that was introduced back in Miss Captain Marvel. Sorry again. Talos. Talos is back, played by Ben Mendelsohn, and yeah, I still like this dude. I remember really enjoying him back when Miss Marvel, Captain Marvel was came out, and seeing him back here again, putting a lot of emotional range in this one. Because when we were first introduced, we met him and his wife and his daughter, and now like there's like a familial tragedy in there, which causes even further strife between him and some of the some of his people.
Yeah, because he's sort of like one of those that are like friends with Fury. Like he knows, he kind of understands like where
Mm-hmm.
he's coming from, and he's sort of like while he also is like, I want to try to be peaceful about this. These are my people. I don't want to like be seen as like a traitor to my race kind of thing. But at the same time, it's like what you guys are doing is not okay kind
Yeah,
of thing. Like we can't be doing this
we
kind
can't
of.
be just as we can't be the aggressors here,
Yeah.
and it leads to a very interesting like storyline that I'm very much interested in to see how that plays off,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it comes to his history with Fury and his people, right? Because there's a lot of moments where he's like, "No, I got this. I can talk them out," and it's clearly it's not happening, dude. These are very they follow their orders to a T kind of people.
Yeah, they've been radicalized.
Mm-hmm.
To they're kind of too far gone
Yeah.
to be reasoned with. Like they're like, no, this is the only way, kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. And it's like, yeah, it does seem like Talos is gonna have to come to terms with that, and might have to get his hands dirty, which he
Mm-hmm.
probably he doesn't he feels very uncomfortable doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is kind of interesting seeing that. And I do think that at least from what we already seen from this first episode, like um just seeing that sort of like tension of like who is a Skrull, who isn't a Skrull kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I mean, I know obviously in the comics there were like superheroes that were Skrulls or whatever kind of thing. I don't think we're gonna get like any of that in this show. Like I don't think there's gonna be a
No,
Skrull.
no, no, no. There is not going to be a Skrull who is secretly Captain America or Captain Marvel or whoever, because like that wouldn't make any. I mean, yes, it would make sense, but like, why would a Skrull who's like because the whole point of Secret Invasion in the comic, right, was about them trying to occupy or take over Earth. There's never been a real reason until now for them to do that because like they gave us an explanation as to why now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And nowhere in the past inclinations have they established like, oh, maybe they could have started now or 10 years ago. But no, there's a reason why they're doing it now, especially with everything that's been going on with again with Fury and his relationship with the Skrulls. So he's at the center of this.
Mm-hmm.
So it only makes sense as to that. Now, you were saying?
No, I mean I was more so of like because I think
Yeah,
because we see how the Skrulls
yeah,
are able to like obviously they are able to shapeshift into whoever, but like these
yeah.
extremist Skrulls, have like another complicated. I wouldn't say complicated, but it's very interesting setup as well of not only just replicating,
Mm,
like a person's face and stuff like that, but they also have like this technology that allows them to straight up just read their thoughts, their minds and stuff
mm,
to get all their memories or whatever. So that way they're not like, doing the usual thing where you try to replace somebody and it's like, yeah, sure, I know you, random person. So they're
ah,
like,
yes, wife, I am here, husband.
like that sort of thing.
Yeah,
It gives it at least gives it a bit of a story reason as to why
yeah.
the scrolls are good at that stuff.
Mm,
Um,
it,
it also just has this sort of like creepy thing of like they're just abducting a bunch of people,
yeah.
you know, kind of like
Just like in a comic.
yeah, they're all just
Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty crazy, but
Mm,
but yeah, no, it is gonna be interesting to keep going through that through line of like who is a scroll, who isn't a scroll. I mean, I have at least one interesting thought about who might be a Skrull.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if I want to say that right now.
No, 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 don't. Because if you're wrong, you look like an idiot, and if you're right, you're gonna look like a smartass.
Well, I would be a prophet,
Damn
right?
it.
But yeah, it's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's why. Again, I'm not against the fact that maybe the director didn't read the comic or whatever, because like you can still get the beat, the plot beats and the idea of what makes Secret Invasion like very a well interesting story.
Mm-hmm.
Because like it's like who do you trust? And there's like a lot of movies and television shows that have that sort of theory, that have that sort of thing going on. Like what was the name of that movie? That famous like alien invasion movie.
They Live.
Yeah, no, well that too. But the one with like the invasion of the body snatchers.
Right.
Yeah, because you know how in that movie, especially I think it was the John Carpenter version.
Mm-hmm.
Was it John Carpenter? The one with the dog face, the human dog face.
Was it?
Well, basically, you know how like in those movies, like they abduct the humans, they take over, and all that stuff. If they can really like play around with that kind of idea, and that's because that's basically what Secret Invasion was in the comics. It was just that, right? And even in like the Earthrise Heroes cartoon, they did that with like, oh yeah, everyone is like secretly a scroll kind of stuff, and that's like kind of like the big like revelation of that season. But yeah, like I don't blame them for being like, hey, you don't have to read it. It's basically Invasion of the Body Snatchers
Mm-hmm.
and stuff. So I get that.
Yeah.
I totally get that. I didn't know there's more than one movie though.
Well, I mean, it's a general, like the idea of like some sort of.
Oh no! I'm saying like there's like multiple versions of it.
No, I'm pretty sure. I think it was like a movie back in the '50s, and then they remade it.
And then they remade it again.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think They Live is a remake of it, but
No,
it's
no, no.
similar.
They live is a different thing.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I know what you're thinking.
Yeah.
But no, it's like I said, like we were saying, it's a lot of those kind of movies. So again, I'm not surprised as to them saying like you don't have to read it. Think of it though. Think of this movie and this movie and that show, whatever. That's basically what it is.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about seeing Nick Fury back, Samuel L. Jackson?
I mean, it's neat, I don't think he would ever be gone. I mean, heck, he's gonna be in the next the Marvels.
Yeah,
He's gonna be in that movie.
Yeah.
So,
I
so I'm gonna be. It's gonna be interesting to see
Yeah.
how that ties in all together.
If it does,
If it at all, I don't know.
I will say it is interesting to see Nick Fury in such a different light because at this point he is like not a different character, but a character with a different motivation, right?
He's been aged.
Yes.
He has essentially been through quite a bit now, and he's sort of just like
yeah.
a bit rusty, but
I mean, when he's first introduced, he's like limping, and like when we were introduced with Fury back in like 2008, he was tall and strong, leg working. Now he's just like, oh, I'm limping, I'm tired, kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that's why there are fair characters like, are you even like prepared for this, Nick? Because it doesn't seem like you got the,
Yeah.
you don't got it in you anymore, kind of thing.
And there's also the fact that this is and it's heavily implied that this is like Nick after losing Tony.
Well, I mean, yeah, this is clearly set after the events of that stuff. Like he has like.
Well, no, I'm saying like it's implied that he's buried himself in work.
Mm-hmm.
So as to why like he hasn't like no one's seen him or talked to him, or the fact that he's like in space and he hasn't come back to Earth in a while because of like shit that happened because of the snap. So it's a very interesting dynamic to go on with. But yeah, no, he is our main lead, so having him be there makes it very interesting. And he's doing pretty good. Samuel Jackson's doing a good job as Nick Fury.
Well, yeah, no, I think he's always been
Yeah.
good in the role, and now I think you know, like you could argue this Secret Invasion show is like technically also just Nick Fury's show, you know,
Yeah.
because it is about him and his relationship with the Skrulls and having to figure out how to stop this secret invasion and stuff. Like, you know, this is
Hmm.
very isn't just like an adaptation of the secret invasion storyline. It's also just seeing Nick Fury in this sort of new light, you know, as sort of a tired but still like willing to do whatever it takes to, you know, save the world kind of thing,
Hmm.
you know. But he's sort of he's kind of pushed into the corner and has very limited resources to work with, and you know he's gonna try his best to figure a way to get out of it, you know.
Yeah. So we're in. I'm not gonna say too much, but where it ends, it just makes me wonder. Okay, what's gonna go? What's gonna go down? This is that was a good twist. Uh, sad, surprised that happened. I kind of want to see where it goes with Nick. I want to see what happens next. I'll say that.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and I can go too deep into it. Any final thoughts on this episode?
Um, Not off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I mean, no, I mean, I think you know it's a solid premise. The
Yeah.
episode's you know definitely has a bit more of a brisker pace, especially with some stuff involving Talos and his whole ordeal. But you know, I think it's gonna be kind of interesting to see where it all goes, and not to say I'm more intrigued as to like where does this leave us into the upcoming Marvels movie, you know, the Marvels movie. But more of like it'd be kind of interesting to see where that like movie
Mm-hmm.
takes place in terms of the timeline, because obviously, not all Marvel movies are like release order does not mean like um when it happened,
Yeah.
because obviously you have kind of the famous like Iron Man 2, Hulk, and Thor all happened within the span of a week
Yeah.
in terms of the MCU timeline, even though those movies came out like in different years basically.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you know it's kind of one of those interesting kind of notes of like, okay, it's gonna be interesting to see where these movies sort of slot in terms of the timeline kind of thing, you know. But yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to more of the
Yeah.
show. You know, so far it seems like it's kind of hitting all the right beats in terms of like what you want from a Secret Invasion storyline.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but yeah, I think I'm gonna be uh, very
Yeah.
looking forward to you know.
Yeah. No, I'm on the same boat. Had a little ups and downs for me, but I'm interested to see where this plays off. It's a little slow though, but I mean, I kind of expected that when they're trying to do an what's the word I'm looking for?
Espionage.
Espionage storyline.
You just say spy thriller.
Spy
It's
thriller,
it's
yeah.
easier for your mouth, man.
It's easier for my mouth, yeah. And my S and my P's don't like to get work together. But yeah, no, if you guys enjoyed what you heard, be sure to follow us on all social media, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And I think it's Geek Centurions. We're most active on Instagram, which you find link to all the podcasts, we're officially part of, like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, all the like. And you'll find a link to the YouTube for y'all listeners out there who want to put a face to the voice. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And yeah, Patreon's there for any reason. And yeah, it's me, your boy Eli.
Be Joe.
Go check out Secret Innovation. Give us tell us your thoughts. And yeah, have a good one. Peace.